My name is Isabel Williams, and I was 32 years old when my family made it unmistakably clear that, in their eyes, I had chosen the wrong life. They never said it outright, at least not at first. They didn't need to. Disappointment has its own tone, its own pauses, its own looks that linger half a second too long. 5 years ago, I married my boyfriend, Evan, beneath the massive oak tree on my grandmother's land, the same tree I'd climbed as a kid. The same one she used to sit under with a thermos of coffee, telling me stories about how real things, real lives, were built slowly, with patience and work. No ballroom, no crystal chandeliers, no valet parking. Just hay bales, arranged in crooked rows, wildflowers tucked into mason jars, and a barbecue pit that filled the clearing with the smell of smoke and spice and something honest. To us, it was perfect. To my family, it was something to endure. My coworkers showed up in clean jeans and work boots, hands rough, smiles easy. Evan's friends brought homemade desserts and wore sundresses that fluttered in the breeze. People laughed without checking who was watching. They hugged without worrying about wrinkles. My parents arrived last. My father stepped out of his Mercedes, straightening the cuffs of his expensive suit as if he were walking into a shareholder meeting instead of his daughter's wedding. He checked his watch, once, then again, like time itself was something this place had stolen from him. My mother followed, lips pressed tight, eyes scanning the clearing. I could practically hear her doing mental math, calculating how much money we'd saved by not renting a country club. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. Then my older sister Bianca arrived. She didn't just arrive, she made an entrance. Bianca and her husband Reed stepped out of their car, dressed like they were headed to a Forbes gala. Perfect tailoring, perfect posture, the kind of confidence that comes from believing money is proof of worth. Reed gave the place a once-over, eyebrows lifting just slightly, like he was trying to hide a smirk. The ceremony itself went fine. Evan squeezed my hand when my voice trembled during my vows. My best friend cracked a joke that broke the tension, and people laughed. Real laughter, not polite applause. For a moment, I let myself believe the day might actually be about us. Then came the speeches. Reed stood up, champagne flute in hand, wearing that familiar expression, the one he always got right before reminding everyone in the room that he was smarter than them. "I'll be honest," he began, smiling thinly. "When Bianca told me her little sister was getting married, I thought she was joking. I figured Isabel's one true relationship was with her welding equipment." His finance buddies laughed immediately. Mine didn't. "But then," he continued, warming to the sound of it, "I met Evan, and it made sense. Isabel works with metal. Evan works with ideas. Match made in a hardware store, right?" A few more laughs from his side. I felt Evan's hand tighten around mine. I kept smiling, because that's what you do when you've been trained your whole life not to make a scene. Reed wasn't finished. "I remember Bianca telling me stories about Isabel building go-karts and random metal projects as a kid," he said. "Meanwhile, I was studying market trends and learning how to build real wealth. Some of us were born to build empires, but society needs both types, right? Someone's got to make the fixtures for the boardrooms." Bianca stood beside him, nodding like he was delivering a TED Talk. Then she leaned into the microphone. "I just want to add," she said, her voice dripping with fake warmth, "that I'm so proud of my little sister for finding someone who appreciates her unique lifestyle." She turned toward me, smile sharp. "Isabel, you're so brave for embracing this whole rustic thing. I could never give up my spa days and shopping trips, but I admire your commitment to simplicity." My face burned. My father's speech was worse. Short, clinical, emotionless. "Isabel has always chosen a different path," he said, standing stiffly in his $1,000 suit. "We wish her and Evan the best." That was it. No stories, no pride, no love. That night, after everyone cleared out and the fairy lights flickered low, I found myself standing alone beneath the oak tree. The ground was littered with footprints and empty bottles, like evidence of something that had already passed. Evan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "They're not worth it," he said quietly. "They don't see what you're building, but I do, and it matters." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Standing there on what was supposed to be the happiest night of my life, all I could think about was how my own family saw me, as the daughter who couldn't cut it, the disappointment who settled for less, the punchline they tolerated out of obligation. I didn't know it then. But that speech, every smug word of it, was going to look unbelievably stupid one day. They thought they knew who I was. They had no idea. 3 years after the wedding, life settled into a rhythm that felt steady, quiet, but solid. I ran my fabrication shop full-time, the same one my family liked to describe as a phase I never outgrew. Custom metalwork paid the bills, railings for commercial buildings, structural frames, architectural details other people noticed only after they were installed and holding weight they never thought about. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Evan and I lived simply. Same house, same trucks, same routines. We never worried about rent or groceries, and that alone felt like success to me. What my family didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I'd been experimenting in the back corner of my shop for years, long before my wedding, long before Reed ever said my name with a smirk. I was obsessed with a problem no one else seemed interested in solving. Why outdoor metal degraded so quickly? Why corrosion was treated as inevitable instead of preventable? I started reading materials science journals late at night, watching lectures online, emailing professors who probably assumed I was a bored hobbyist. Evan helped from the beginning. He had a background in environmental chemistry, and when he came home from his job at the conservation center, he'd find me covered in metal dust and half-failed test samples, frustrated and exhausted. Instead of laughing, he'd ask questions. What if you adjust the bonding process? What happens at the molecular level if you change the temperature curve? For 4 years, nothing worked. Test pieces cracked. Others corroded faster than untreated steel. I ruined equipment, wasted money, questioned my sanity more than once. Then one night, it clicked. The process worked. Metal treated with my formula became stronger, lighter, and nearly corrosion-proof, without toxic runoff, without environmental damage. I tested it relentlessly. Salt spray chambers, stress tests, winters left outdoors. It held. 2.5 years earlier, I did something I didn't tell my family about. I filed patents, 4 of them. I formed a company, Titan Coding Systems, registered under Evan's name for privacy. I wasn't hiding. I just didn't want commentary while I was building something fragile and unfinished. The first year, nothing happened. The second year, a regional manufacturer asked questions. By the third year, about 6 months before everything fell apart, I had licensing agreements with 2 companies, and Titan Coding Systems was valued at just under $4 million. On the outside, nothing changed. Inside my family's world, everything was about image. Reed quit his corporate job to start his own investment firm. He talked about vision and timing like he'd invented both. My father spoke about him with pride that made my chest ache. Bianca became a full-time influencer overnight. Luxury dinners, designer closets, endless posts about hard work and manifesting abundance. Reed was her star content, the brilliant investor disrupting the market. They bought a massive house in an expensive neighborhood and invited everyone to a housewarming party. I almost didn't go. Evan convinced me. I spent a week fabricating them a custom coffee table, steel frame, flawless welds, tempered glass. I was proud of it. Bianca glanced at it once. "Oh, thank you," she said, already distracted. The night was an endless parade of bragging. Bianca introduced Evan like he was a charity case. "This is my sister-in-law's partner. He works in conservation. Very noble." The women glanced at his simple clothes, then turned back to talk about handbags. Reed cornered me later with his finance friends. "Good for you," he said, patting my shoulder. "Honest work. Someone's got to make the stuff we put in offices." Then, casually, almost playfully, he asked, "So, how's the shop? Still making mailboxes for neighbors?" Bianca giggled. Before I could respond, Evan spoke. "Better than gambling other people's retirement funds." Silence. Reed's smile vanished. We left shortly after. That night, my cousin Andrea called. "Be careful," she said quietly. "I'm hearing things. Reed's making risky bets." Driving away from that mansion, I had a strange sinking feeling. Reed wasn't building an empire. He was building a bomb. And it was only a matter of time before it went off. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day that lulls you into thinking nothing important is about to happen. I was in the shop, ear protection on, sparks flying as I finished a weld, when my phone started vibrating across the workbench. I shut everything down and checked the screen. "Andrea." I wiped my hands on a rag before answering. "Hey," I said, "what's up?" Her voice was tight, controlled, the way people sound when they're trying not to panic. "Isabel, are you alone?" Something in my stomach dropped. "Yeah, what's wrong?" "It's Reed," she said. "He's in serious trouble, like criminal trouble." The word echoed in my head. I leaned back against the workbench. "What happened?" "I was at your parents' place last night," she said. "They thought I couldn't hear them, but Bianca was on speakerphone." Reed has lost everything. Not just his money, his clients' money. There are lawsuits coming, maybe worse. I closed my eyes. How bad? I asked. Millions, Andrea said quietly. He convinced friends of your parents, old college buddies, even some of Bianca's relatives to invest with him. The deal he was pushing collapsed. The land was contaminated, or fake, or both. No one really knows yet, but he's completely underwater. Images flashed through my mind. Reed standing in that living room, talking about vision, about winners and losers, about how he knew what the future was. Why are you telling me this? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Because they're coming for you. I straightened. What do you mean? I heard your dad say it, Andrea said. Clear as day. He said, she's the only one with real assets. He was talking about your land, your shop. He said you owe it to the family. The audacity hit me like a slap. For years, they'd treated my work like a hobby, my life like a consolation prize. Now that Reed had crashed and burned, suddenly what I built mattered. He can't be serious, I said. He is, Andrea replied. Your mom keeps saying Reed made one mistake and family sticks together. Bianca's a mess. They see you as the only way out. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Thanks for the warning, I said. I had to tell you, Andrea replied. Just be ready. The line went dead. That evening, Evan and I sat on the porch, the sun sinking low over the property. I told him everything. So they're going to show up here, I said, with lawyers, demands, guilt. Evan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, we need to talk before they do. I frowned. About what? About Titan, he said, and about Reed. He pulled out his phone and opened a folder. I've been tracking the industry, he continued. Who's betting where? Who's shorting what? He turned the screen toward me. Reed's been running a hedge fund for the last 18 months. I blinked. I thought he did development deals. That's what he told everyone, Evan said. But he's been shorting stocks, making bets against companies he thinks will fail. He scrolled. Want to guess what his biggest position is? My breath caught as I read the name. Titan Coding Systems. Highlighted. Red. Massive. He bet over $1 million, Evan said. Client money. His money. He was convinced Titan would collapse. The realization hit me slowly like cold water. He destroyed himself, I whispered, by betting against me. I stared out at the land my grandmother had left me. Reed didn't even know it was my company. To him, Titan was just another startup to crush. And now he was drowning in the consequences. 4 days later, the legal threat arrived. A courier, a thick envelope, a law firm letterhead. Inside, a demand. I was expected, morally obligated, to cooperate in selling my property to resolve Reed's financial situation. 1 week, or they'd pursue all legal options. They're threatening to sue you, Evan said, reading it aloud. To force me to sell my own home, I said flatly. They can't, he replied, but they're hoping you don't know that. He was already dialing. I'm calling our lawyer. The clock had started. And this time, I wasn't the one on the defensive. The deadline came and went without a lawsuit. Friday passed, then Saturday, then Sunday. For a brief moment, I wondered if they'd finally realized how empty their threats were. Maybe someone, some lawyer with a conscience, had told them to stop before they humiliated themselves further. Monday morning proved me wrong. I was in the shop setting up a program on the CNC mill when I heard tires crunching on gravel. Not one car. 3. I killed the machine and stepped outside. My father's Mercedes rolled to a stop first. Behind it, my mother's Lexus, looking noticeably older than I remembered. The third car was unfamiliar, sleek and black. A lawyer. Evan appeared beside me, phone already in his hand. They're here, he said calmly. I know. He tapped the screen. Our lawyer's on the way. 20 minutes. I nodded. Then we listened. The doors opened. My father stepped out looking smaller somehow, older. The confidence he used to wear like armor had cracks now. My mother followed, eyes red, face drawn. Bianca came next, and she looked wrecked. No makeup, hair pulled back carelessly. Her shoulders sagged like she'd been carrying weight too heavy for her. Reed stepped out last. He'd lost weight. Dark circles hollowed his eyes. The man who used to dominate every room now looked like he was barely holding himself upright. The lawyer joined them, briefcase in hand. They didn't knock. My father pushed open the shop door and walked in like he still owned the place. Everyone followed. Evan and I stood by the main workbench. We didn't move. Isabel, my father said, forcing authority into his voice. We need to talk. You drove a long way for a conversation we already had, I replied evenly. The situation is critical, he said. Reed is facing lawsuits, possibly criminal charges. We need to act immediately. He dropped a folder on my workbench. Everything's in there. Purchase agreement. A developer's ready to buy the property. The money goes straight into escrow. It saves the family. Saves the family, I repeated. Or saves him? Bianca stepped forward, her composure finally cracking. Please, she said. He's your brother-in-law. He made a mistake. You can't let him go to prison. He didn't make a mistake, I said. He made choices. Their lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Williams, you have a familial obligation. You can't sell what you don't own, I interrupted. He frowned. The property is deeded to you. Was, Evan said calmly. My father's face reddened. Stop playing games. We've already sold our house. It wasn't enough. My mother's voice broke. After everything we've done for you, you owe us this. That was it. Evan stepped forward. There's been a misunderstanding, he said. A big one. They all turned to him. You looked at us and saw what you wanted, he continued. A struggling fabricator and someone easy to pressure. He placed his hand on the folder. 2 years ago, this property was transferred to Titan Coating Systems LLC as a corporate asset. Silence. My father blinked. What did you just say? I said, Evan repeated calmly, that legally, this land belongs to Titan Coating Systems. Isabel is the founder and majority owner. She can't sell it even if she wanted to. Reed went white. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Titan Coating Systems? He whispered. That's right, I said. That's impossible, my father snapped. You're lying. I opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Patents, financial statements, licensing agreements. And this, I said, pulling out one page, is a public filing from your hedge fund. Reed's hand started shaking. You shorted Titan, I said. Over $1 million. Client money. You bet everything on my failure. Bianca collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. You didn't know, Evan said quietly. We registered the company under my name. Their lawyer was already packing his briefcase. Just then, another car pulled up. Our lawyer walked in smiling. Am I late? No, Evan said. Perfect timing. The truth had landed. And there was no undoing it. No one spoke for several seconds after the truth landed. The shop, usually loud with machines and movement, felt hollow, like the air had been sucked out of it. Bianca was still on the floor, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. Reed stood frozen, eyes locked on the documents spread across my workbench, as if staring long enough might change what they said. My father finally found his voice. This is impossible, he said hoarsely. You don't live like someone who has that kind of money. I met his gaze. That's because I never needed to prove anything to anyone. Our lawyer stepped forward, setting his briefcase down with deliberate calm. For the record, he said, I represent Isabel Williams and Titan Coating Systems. I've reviewed your demand letter. It's legally meaningless. Any attempt to force a sale would be dismissed immediately. Their lawyer didn't argue. He didn't even look at us. He closed his briefcase and left. My mother started crying, quietly at first, then openly. How could you do this to us? She asked. We're your family. I felt something inside me settle. Family doesn't spend decades making you feel worthless, I said. Family doesn't mock your partner. Family doesn't bet against your success and then demand you destroy yourself to save them. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. They didn't move. Now, I said. Reed helped Bianca to her feet. My father hesitated, like he wanted to say something, anything, that might restore the balance he'd always assumed would tilt his way. The consequences, he started, are yours, I said. They left. The cars disappeared down the long driveway, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never known before. Freedom. The weeks that followed were quiet. No angry calls, no apologies, no demands. Just silence. Reed's situation unraveled fast. Lawsuits piled up. The SEC opened an investigation. Bianca deleted every social media account she'd ever curated so carefully. My parents sold what little they had left and downsized into a condo they never showed anyone. In their version of the story, I was the villain, the ungrateful daughter, the one who abandoned her family. Meanwhile, Titan Coating Systems took off. We signed another licensing deal, then another. An aerospace manufacturer wanted to test our process. An automotive supplier followed. I hired employees, built a proper office. For the first time, people spoke to me with respect, not because of money, but because I knew what I was doing. Evan thrived, running R&D full-time, pushing the technology further than I ever could alone. We were happy. 6 weeks later, Andrea stopped by with a casserole and a tired smile. They want to apologize, she said carefully. Someday. I won't, I replied. She nodded. I know. That night, as Evan and I sat on the porch, my phone buzzed. An email. An acquisition offer. $22 million. We took it on our terms. I stayed on as head of R&D. paid off the land completely, set up protections no one could ever touch. Months later, my father showed up alone. He looked broken. I was wrong, he said, about everything. I listened. Then I said, "You don't get to be proud now that there's money." And I walked away. I spent 30 years trying to earn their approval. In the end, I realized I never needed it. I built something real. I chose my life, and I didn't look back.